Hey everyone, I'm Nick. Joining me today is Jose Najarro. Of course, you know Jose, the host of the Semiconductor Investing and More podcast. Jose, how are you this morning?
Pretty good, Nick. Thank you again for having me back on the channel. Last week we did a great discussion on, I want to say, Intel and some of the issues and some of its competitors. And I think today we're going to take a closer look at one of my favorite companies. So I'm super excited.
I am too. It's one of my favorite as well. But I think this is an important thing to do. You take some of your favorite stocks, your favorite businesses to invest in, and you put them to the test. And so as we lured you all in with the video title, today we're going to take a look at Nvidia and whether this recent run up in the stock price is justified or not. So Jose, maybe just to provide a little bit of backdrop here, we've talked about this in other episodes, but maybe get everyone up to speed. Why do you think Nvidia has been off to the races here in recent months? Since mid-October, it's almost doubled in price from October 2022 until mid-February. Before continuing, let me remind you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if this video is helpful as you do your own investment research and increase your knowledge of business and technology. We really appreciate the support, as subscribing to the channel helps us continue putting out content like this.
Definitely, Nick. And I want to say, I think it's very important, like you mentioned, for one to be bullish in a company. It's also okay to kind of be bearish or worry or cautious to one extent, right? You don't want to just be leaning to one side. And for Nvidia, right, like you mentioned, one of the things I have seen, and I'm pretty sure a lot of investors have seen, is just this crazy run up. I mean, there's so much happening right now where, first, I want to say you do have a little bit, investors are a lot futuristic outlook. They're looking into what's expected to grow in the upcoming quarters and the upcoming years. And it does seem for semiconductor industries, even though maybe quarter one and quarter two might be weak, quarter three or the second half of 2023 might be, is when we expect at the moment to see some nice growth. So certain investors are like, okay, I'm a long-term investor. Maybe it's okay for me to get at these prices, even though maybe the next few quarters might be a little bit weak. I still believe in the long term of things. So I do believe that's one of the things. And we have seen a lot of semiconductor companies kind of seeing that growth. There is another thing I want to say, and this is kind of increased hype in artificial intelligence at the moment. And I don't know if hype is the proper word, because we still have yet to see how it's going to kind of transform this industry. But at the moment, we don't have that much information. But we see this AI battle going between, for example, Google and Microsoft, where they're trying to do all these kind of natural language solutions for their search engine. And the thought process is, hey, if these companies who have billions and billions of users on their platform are going to be offering something like this, then the need for NVIDIA's GPUs is going to also increase dramatically. Unfortunately, I want to say, while that might be the case, we don't know how much it's going to increase, how long is it going to increase, or if it's even going to really take a nice bump. So I want to say there's a nice amount of future outlook that, in my opinion, is realistic, like that quarter three, quarter four outlook. But then there's that, I want to say, unrealistic hype at the moment from AI that's kind of also fueling this, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think this is a good opportunity here to refer to the revenue trend chart that NVIDIA provides every single quarter. And so viewers, you can see here, maybe you're familiar with this. If not, and you are or want to be an NVIDIA shareholder, get familiar with this. It's on NVIDIA's investor relations site. But you can see here what Jose is referring to here with NVIDIA. That data center segment has absolutely blown past the video gaming segment as NVIDIA's top moneymaker. And so within that data center segment is where all of the AI work is. I should say maybe the majority of the AI work that NVIDIA is doing kind of gets bundled together. And so, again, as more companies put AI to work, be that Microsoft or Google, Microsoft with the OpenAI ChatGPT partnership, Google and its Bard system, the kind of its response, its counterattack to Microsoft. Basically, behind all of that AI is a GPU in the data center somewhere that NVIDIA is helping operate. So that's where a lot of that future growth potential is coming from. Jose, I want to do something a little bit fun here to segue into this next segment. I'm going to show you two charts, two stock price charts for Nvidia. The first one here, what year are we looking at here for Nvidia stock price? It's a roughly 1.25 year period. And I wanted to see what you thought. Is this present or is this sometime in the past that we're looking at?
I don't think it's present. I would say maybe 2018, I would guess, around 2017, 2018, around that time frame.
You are correct. Okay, so the stock price is roughly the second half of 2018 through the first half of 2019. So the reason why I throw that up here for us to take a look at is I want to now compare it to right now. So you can see Nvidia has fallen significantly in value from its all-time high. But then all of a sudden, since roughly October, the big run-up in stock price. So I put these on display, Jose, just to kind of preface this discussion that I'm feeling a little bit nervous right now. Where we see Nvidia stock price rallying, I feel like we could be in for a repeat of 2019. That first chart where the first half of 2019, Nvidia kind of rockets higher, and then the stock price collapses again summer of 2019 before ultimately resuming its meteoric rise. Jose, I know you've been a shareholder of Nvidia for a number of years. Something kind of similar happened back then as well. A lot of hype headed into what the next upcycle for the chip industry. And again, it was data centers and all of Nvidia's work to prepare its chips. Do you think we could be headed for a repeat of that?
Yeah, and I think this is one of my biggest fears, Nick, here for Nvidia. Like I mentioned, even though I'm a long-term bull, I always, especially with this kind of valuation, compared to even some of its peers, right? It's grown a lot faster, and I always worried of, hey, upcoming we're going to most likely discuss earnings are happening, I believe, next week, right. And I'm not too confident that there might be anything that would wow me, right? It's things that I believe are already kind of priced in. Hey, data center, we've kind of seen maybe small, very, very small sequential growth, if anything, for the upcoming outlook. I just can't. The consumer market's still expected to be somewhat weak. So I don't think there's anything that can happen unless this AI move is really, really crazy, and I'm just not seeing it, but I don't think that's the case. I think too much has been priced to perfection for Nvidia at the moment.
That is exactly my worry as well. As bullish as I am on the business over the next 5 years, especially the next 10 years, recent rally in stock price gives me pause. So Nvidia presently, at the moment, stock trades for 90 times trailing 12-month earnings. That metric could actually get worse. So here's another chart. This is Nvidia's quarterly operating income. So this is basically their profit left over after they pay for all of the costs of doing business, keeping the lights on. You can see here we actually have at least one more quarter where we're going to be lapping record profits for Nvidia at about the beginning of 2022. So the current price to earnings ratio is probably going to get worse. Like you said, this next quarter, there's not a lot that's going to be there that wows us. So priced to perfection, I worry that the market may have gotten a little bit ahead of itself, maybe over the front of its skis a little bit, to use that winter idiom, given that it's freezing outside right now. How do you handle a situation like this, Jose? For you, what are you doing?
So I feel like this is, even though I've been investing for numerous years now, Nick, this is where I feel I have the biggest or the most difficulty in my investing portfolio. It's So right now, I can tell you what I'm not doing. I'm definitely not. Nvidia is already one of my top holdings. It depends on the day. It can go from number 1 to number 2 to number 3. But my top 3 holdings usually have around the same holding size, so they kind of shift between the 3. I'm not adding at the moment just because of that fear of the valuation at the moment, and it's already a nice portion in my portfolio. Now, the question is, should I sell a small piece at the moment because it's already a big holding and already sees a kind of a nice gain? That's where I don't know. I know certain investors might do it that way, and I think there's no wrong or right answer here. I think I understand the risk. If I don't sell now and the stock prices drops, I miss out on that gain, right? And I just have to accept that risk. At the end of the day, I do believe in the long term of things. We're still pretty early, in my opinion, for Nvidia, but that's me talking about 5-10 year time span. So it's pretty interesting. I am debating if maybe I should sell a small position, but I can't say I've made a final decision yet. How about for you, Nick?
Yeah, this is something that I always go back and forth on as well. I tend to be a buy and hold investor. My ideal time horizon is forever. But I did actually just sell a little bit of my Nvidia profit. And maybe I'll explain why that is. Even after I sold a little bit, it is actually still my top holding. And the reason was last year I was a buyer. During the worst of the downturn for the stock itself, I was buying Nvidia. That position that I added to last year is up 70-80%. So I took some of that profit off of the table. And even in doing so, it's still my top position. But I like your approach, though, too, because, you know, if you're still, especially an investor, still adding to your account, that can kind of diversify away some of the risk as well. If you're adding to your account, not adding to the Nvidia position and maybe buying other stocks around it instead, that's another way, perfectly acceptable way of doing it. I just kind of made the really difficult decision that for now, maybe until at least after I see this next earnings report, I wanted to take a little bit of that position off the table. And maybe if we do get a significant pullback in the coming weeks or months, maybe I'll add back to it at that point.
Out of curiosity, Nick, this, and if I was to sell, it would be the same as you, where it would I would sell a small position where it would still maintain a big position in my portfolio, still probably one of my top 3 holdings. This position that you sold, are you holding the cash or for a better opening in Nvidia, or have you kind of used that to kind of buy other funds in your portfolio that you might see are more attractive at the moment?
At the moment, it's in cash. I did not redeploy it yet, but I will be looking to reinvest it either into Nvidia. If we do get that sizable pullback, I would be more than happy to add it back to Nvidia again. But I do have a list of other stocks that I would like to increase my position in, and just a couple that I might start a new position in as well if I don't see a significant enough pullback in Nvidia stock after the earnings report. Yeah, definitely, Nick. And I want to say, like, I feel like I'm always a short-term bear, but a long-term bull. And like you mentioned, I would not be surprised if this earnings we do see some decent pullback, especially with all this expectation that we're kind of seeing. So yeah, definitely. I mean, best of luck, Nick. and I do believe it. I do believe here for any investor watching, there is no real right answer. It's just you have to understand the risk. If you don't sell and position goes down, obviously you miss out. But if you do sell, there also is that risk that, hey, who knows? They might release something crazy that might kind of do the opposite. So for every action, there is a reaction. And as long as you understand that, that's all that kind of matters, because I think at the end of the day, there's no right answer. Right, Nick? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That is a really important point. It depends on each investor, their situation and their goal, why they're investing. And I will say this, Jose, I have one last brief question for you, but before I ask you, I'll just let everyone know, Jose, you're doing a live stream during NVIDIA's earnings report next week. So
Yeah.
yeah. What's up with that? How does that work?
Yeah, Nick. So in the Semiconductor channel, the one you are a co-host in numerous episodes, Semiconductor Investing and More, the #1 semiconductor podcast in the world, I am going to be doing a live stream of Nvidia's earnings. We usually kind of go over the report real quick and then kind of just listen to the call while I do some commentary takes. Nick, if you have time, I definitely would like for you to join. We can set that up as well, because I think it's always important to kind of hear what not only the actual earnings report, but kind of listen to the Q&A session and kind of just listen to the tone management is kind of describing the future outlook. I think a lot can be learned during an earnings call, and I like to share that with the viewers. So make sure to check out at Semiconductor Investing and More. Absolutely.
The link is embedded in the video, also down below in the comments. Do check that out. I'll second that, Jose. NVIDIA's quarterly earnings calls have actually grown to be my favorite over the last few years. CEO Jensen Huang, I think, you always get a great education. CFO Colette Kress gives a nice highlight, but then the real treat is in the Q&A section when Jensen kind of chimes in with his remarks. Top-notch stuff. Tune in with us next week. Last question for you, Jose, because I know you've got stuff to do here. Other stocks that you might be adding to now instead of NVIDIA. You alluded to that. What are you looking at?
Yeah, so right now I think there's a few industries that I really have my eyes on. The semiconductor industry, I think, was one I was looking at very, very heavy for the past few months. With the recent run-up, I'm not it's still up there, but I am looking a lot into a few cybersecurity companies as well at the moment. I've kind of focused on the ETF there at the moment as I continue to learn that space, but I do believe there's a lot of room in the cyber security industry. So ETF there, I do believe is WBR. We recently did an earnings episode, Nick, right, with Billy, where I kind of learned a little bit more about a few companies on semi, and there was another one that microchip technologies that we kind of discussed, and those are two, even though they are in the semiconductor industry, ones I'm keeping an eye out on. So right now, I'm just kind of getting my toes wet on a little bit on here and there. There's nothing in my true radar right now. It's more just industries that I'm really looking at.
Nice. Thank you for that, Jose. Appreciate it. Again, everyone, check out the Semiconductor Investing and More podcast. Link is in the description below. And hang out with Jose next week on the NVIDIA earnings call. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. See you again soon.